Sir,
Three
stop walking.
IC
We need to see
agents
your papers
surrounded
right
a
now.
young man on a
I
city
just got off
sidewalk
work. I'm
and
heading home.
demanded he
Sir, stop
prove he
right there.
belonged
Wait,
in
stop.
America.
I served in the
He
Army
told them
12
he'd
years.
served 12 years in the U.S. Army. He showed them his military ID. He cited his constitutional rights. They beat him anyway. Fists, batons, knees driving into his back while he lay face down on concrete. All of it captured on security cameras from 3 different angles. What the agents didn't know, what they refused to believe even as he told them, was that the man they were assaulting had survived 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan, had earned a Bronze Star for valor, and had given 12 years of his life to the country whose laws they claimed to enforce. But none of that mattered, because they saw a young black man with a backpack walking home from work, and in their minds that was enough. The beating lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The prison sentences would last 5 years each. And the $24.8 million verdict would become the most expensive lesson in American history about what happens when federal agents choose violence over verification. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday evening in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. September heat still radiating from concrete. That golden hour light when the sun sits low and shadows stretch long. A busy city sidewalk next to a beige brick building. Office workers heading home. Cars crawling through rush hour traffic. The ordinary end to an ordinary workday for most people. But in exactly 47 seconds, 3 federal agents would make a decision that would end their careers, send them to federal prison, and force ICE to fundamentally change how it operates in American cities. They just didn't know it yet. Before we continue, where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments because what I'm about to show you happened on an American sidewalk in broad daylight, captured by security cameras that would later be labeled Exhibits A, B, and C in a federal criminal trial. And if this is your first time here, subscribe now. Because this story proves that body cameras and security footage matter. They're the only reason justice happened at all. Terrence Williams was doing something completely ordinary when 3 federal agents decided to destroy his life and their own careers in the same 4-minute span. He was walking home from work. That's it. Walking. Backpack on. Earbuds in. Thinking about dinner and whether he had time to hit the gym before it closed. But what those agents didn't see, what they refused to see even when the evidence was staring them in the face, would cost them everything. The 31-year-old Army veteran had just finished his shift as an HVAC technician for a commercial property management company. 12-hour day. Installing new units in office buildings. Hot work in Phoenix September heat. He was tired. His military-issue backpack, the same one he'd carried through Kandahar province in 2012, held his tools, his work tablet, his lunch container, and his military ID that he kept in the front pocket because old habits die hard. Terrence had enlisted in the Army right out of high school in Detroit. 13 years old when 9/11 happened, watching the towers fall on a TV in his 8th grade classroom. By the time he was 18, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Serve. Defend. Be part of something bigger than himself. He'd deployed to Afghanistan twice. First tour in 2011 with the 10th Mountain Division. 12 months of patrols, IED threats, firefights that erupted without warning. Second tour in 2013, another 12 months, this time as a team leader, responsible for keeping younger soldiers alive. He'd earned his Bronze Star during a Taliban ambush when he'd pulled 2 wounded soldiers to cover while under direct fire, then held the position until medevac arrived. The citation said, "Extraordinary heroism in combat." The reality was uglier. Blood on his hands, screaming, the kind of split-second decisions that either save lives or haunt you forever. He'd come home in 2014, 24 years old with 12 years of service counting his enlistment paperwork. Honorably discharged. Veteran's preference for federal jobs. Using his GI Bill to take night classes in HVAC certification because he was good with his hands, good with mechanical systems, good with the kind of problem-solving that military training had honed. He'd built a good life. Steady job. Decent apartment, gym membership, dating a woman who worked as a nurse at the VA hospital where he got his health care. He volunteered with a veterans organization that helped homeless vets find housing and jobs. He was, by every measure, exactly the kind of citizen any country should be proud to have. That Thursday evening, He was walking down a city sidewalk, minding his business, when the black SUV pulled up to the curb. The security camera mounted on the beige brick building captured everything in perfect high-definition clarity. Timestamp: 18 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds. 3 men emerged from the SUV. Tactical vests with ICE in bold yellow letters. Baseball caps. The lead agent wore olive green under his vest. The second was a large man in a black hoodie. The third hung back near the vehicle. Terrence had his earbuds in, scrolling through his phone as he walked. He didn't notice them at first. Didn't see them fall into formation. A tactical triangle designed to cut off escape routes and establish dominance. Didn't realize he'd become a target until the lead agent stepped directly into his path. In exactly 12 seconds, the lead agent would put hands on Terrence. In 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Terrence would be unconscious on the pavement. But right now, in this moment, the agents were still confident. Still certain they were doing their jobs. Still completely unaware that every movement was being recorded by 3 security cameras, 2 body cams that civilians would activate, and multiple cell phones that would capture angles the fixed cameras couldn't. "Sir, stop walking. We need to see your papers right now." Terrence pulled out his earbuds, confused. He'd been stopped by police before. Every black man in America had that experience. But federal agents on a random sidewalk demanding papers? That was new. "I just got off work," Terrence said, his voice carrying that particular weariness of someone who's had a long day and just wants to get home. "I'm heading home." The lead agent, his body camera would later identify him as Senior Special Agent Marcus Brennan, 38 years old, 12 years with ICE, stepped closer. Aggressive. Posture designed to intimidate. "Stop right there." A passerby in a gray hoodie had stopped about 15 feet away, watching, his hand moving to his phone. The security camera captured the moment he started recording. Another witness. Another angle. More evidence. "I served in the Army for 12 years, Terrence said, keeping his voice calm, controlled. The same tone he'd used to de-escalate situations in Kandahar when tensions ran high and misunderstandings could turn lethal. "I'm a U.S. citizen. I don't know what this is about, but I'm just trying to get home." Have you ever tried to de-escalate a situation where the other person had already decided you were guilty? Drop a comment, because what Terrence was experiencing, being presumed criminal despite every word out of his mouth being true, happens more than you think. And cameras are the only reason anyone believed him. Special Agent Brennan's partner, Agent Davis Cole, 6'4", 240 pounds, former college linebacker, moved to Terrence's right, cutting off that angle. Classic pincer movement. Military tactics used on a city sidewalk against a veteran who recognized the formation immediately. "I said stop right there. Now." Brennan's voice rose, hand moving toward his belt. Not the weapon. The handcuffs. Terrence's military training kicked in. Assess the threat. Identify escape routes. De-escalate if possible. His eyes swept the situation. 3 armed federal agents. Civilians watching but not intervening. Security cameras recording. He knew how this could go wrong. He'd seen it before in America and in war zones. Authority figures making assumptions, situations spiraling, someone getting hurt. "I need my lawyer," Terrence said clearly, loudly enough for witnesses to hear, loudly enough for cameras to pick up. He knew his rights. 4th Amendment, unlawful search and seizure. 5th Amendment, right to remain silent. He'd studied this stuff not in law school but in the veteran support group where they talked about how to survive encounters with law enforcement when your skin color made you suspect. But Brennan wasn't interested in rights. His hand shot out, grabbing Terrence's backpack strap. Terrence flinched back, human reflex, not resistance, but Brennan interpreted it as defiance. "Grab the strap. Don't move. Hands where I can see 'em," Brennan shouted, and in that moment he sealed his own fate. Because those words, caught on 3 cameras and multiple phones, would be played in a courtroom where a judge would ask him to explain exactly what threat a man with a backpack and no weapon posed that required immediate physical force. Cole moved in from the right, his massive hands reaching for Terrence's arms. The third agent, who'd been hanging back, jogged forward. 3 against 1. The passerby in the gray hoodie was yelling something. "Leave him alone!" Or, "He didn't do anything." His phone held high, recording. "Hey! Hey! Get off me!" Terrence's voice rose as hands grabbed him. He tried to pull away, not fighting, just trying to create space, trying to avoid being grabbed by strangers even if they had badges. His backpack slipped off his shoulder. His phone fell from his hand, clattering on the sidewalk, and then Brennan's fist connected with Terrence's jaw. The security camera captured it perfectly. Timestamp: 18 hours 48 minutes and 14 seconds. A closed fist punch to the face of a man who had not swung, had not threatened, had not done anything except try to pull away from being grabbed. Terrence's head snapped back. His legs buckled, and Cole drove him to the ground with the full weight of his 240-pound frame. Terrence hit the concrete face first. The sound was sickening even on the security footage. A wet crunch that would later be identified in medical reports as his nose breaking, his cheekbone fracturing, 2 teeth loosening. Cole's knee drove into Terrence's back, pinning him. Brennan grabbed his arms, wrenching them behind his back with enough force to tear the rotator cuff in his right shoulder. The same shoulder that had carried a rifle through Afghanistan, that had pulled wounded soldiers to safety, that would require surgery and 6 months of physical therapy to repair. "Stop resisting!" Brennan shouted, even though Terrence wasn't resisting. Even though he was face down, bleeding, barely conscious. Even though the footage from 3 angles would show he never raised a hand in violence. The baton came out. Cole's ASP, a collapsible steel baton. He swung it into Terrence's ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. The cracks audible on the security footage. Ribs breaking. Later, the medical examiner would count 4 fractured ribs, one of which punctured Terrence's lung, causing it to partially collapse. "I'm a veteran," Terrence gasped, blood pouring from his nose, his mouth. "I'm a U.S. citizen. Check my ID. It's in my backpack." But they weren't listening. They never really listened, because they'd already decided. Young black man, backpack, city sidewalk. In their minds, that equation ended with undocumented immigrant criminal threat. The fact that he was a Bronze Star recipient, a combat veteran, a tax-paying citizen, none of that computed because they'd never bothered to check. The beating lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. From first contact to the moment Terrence stopped moving, stopped speaking, stopped doing anything except bleeding on a Phoenix sidewalk. The security camera recorded all of it. Every punch, every baton strike, every knee driven into his back. Every second of excessive force applied to a man who wasn't resisting, wasn't armed, wasn't doing anything except trying to survive an encounter with federal authority. At 18 hours 51 minutes and 51 seconds, 4 minutes and 28 seconds after first contact, Terrence went limp, unconscious, blood pooling on the concrete beneath his face. And Brennan finally reached for the backpack he'd mentioned, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a military ID card. The security camera captured Brennan's face in that moment. The confusion, the dawning horror, the realization that he'd just beaten an Army veteran unconscious on a city sidewalk. That everything he'd just done was caught on camera. That he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Cole was still holding Terrence down, knee in his back, when Brennan showed him the ID. Both agents went still. The kind of stillness that comes when you realize you've destroyed your own life and someone else's in the same moment. A crowd had gathered. The man in the gray hoodie was still recording, still shouting. "He told you he was a veteran. He told you. You didn't listen." Other witnesses were on their phones. Some recording, some calling 911. Because what they'd just watched wasn't an arrest. It was an assault. It was excessive force. It was 3 federal agents beating a man who'd never fought back. Phoenix Fire Department arrived at 18 hours 54 minutes and 33 seconds. Paramedics running toward the scene where Terrence lay motionless. They rolled him over gently, checking vitals, calling for immediate transport. Broken nose, fractured cheekbone, for broken ribs, torn rotator cuff, punctured lung, concussion, contusions covering his arms and back where the baton had struck repeatedly. One paramedic, looking at the injuries, looking at the three agents standing there, asked the question that would later be repeated in federal court. What the hell did you do to him? Should federal agents face criminal charges when their excessive force sends someone to the hospital? Comment below, because what happened next would answer that question in a way that shocked the entire law enforcement community. The ambulance rushed Terrence to Phoenix General Hospital. Emergency surgery to repair the punctured lung. Orthopedic consult for the shoulder. Facial reconstruction for the broken cheekbone. 6 hours of surgery. 3 days in ICU. A week in the hospital total. His girlfriend Monica, a VA nurse, arrived within an hour of being called. She found him unconscious, intubated. His face so swollen and bruised she almost didn't recognize him. She'd seen combat injuries in her work with veterans. She'd seen what IEDs did to soldiers. And here was her boyfriend, who'd survived 2 tours in Afghanistan, beaten nearly to death on an American sidewalk by American federal agents. She called his mother in Detroit. She called his veterans support group. She called a civil rights attorney whose number she'd kept in her phone just in case, because being black in America meant always being prepared for the just-in-case moments that white people never had. To think about, the attorney, Marcus Chun, arrived at the hospital the next morning. He listened to Monica's account. He watched the security footage that had already been leaked to local news by witnesses. And he made 3 phone calls. First, to the FBI. Because what he'd seen on that footage wasn't just excessive force, it was a federal crime. Assault under color of authority. Deprivation of civil rights. Potentially attempted murder, given how close Terrence had come to dying from that punctured lung. Second, to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Because this was exactly the kind of case they were supposed to investigate. Third, to a criminal defense attorney, even though Terrence was the victim. Because Chun had seen these cases before, how law enforcement often tried to charge victims with resisting arrest or assault on an officer to justify the violence used against them. The criminal investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The security footage was too clear. The witness accounts too consistent. The injuries too severe. The FBI seized all 3 agents' body cameras, which they turned off. Another violation of policy. They subpoenaed the security footage from the building, from nearby businesses, from the city's traffic cameras. They collected cell phone videos from 7 different witnesses. And they found something else. They found a pattern. Special Agent Marcus Brennan had been involved in 17 excessive force complaints over his 12-year career. 17 times people, almost all of them black or Latino, had accused him of using violence without justification. All 17 complaints had been dismissed, some with minor reprimands, most with nothing at all. Agent Davis Cole had a similar record. 11 complaints, all dismissed. A pattern of targeting people of color, of using force first and asking questions later, of treating brown skin as probable cause. The federal grand jury indicted all 3 agents 6 weeks after the assault. The charges were devastating. Assault with a deadly weapon, the baton. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, because they turned off their body cameras and filed false reports claiming Terrence had resisted arrest. Making false statements to federal investigators. Each charge carried significant prison time. The civil lawsuit followed immediately. Terrence's legal team filed in federal court, naming the 3 agents individually, their supervisors, ICE as an agency, and the Department of Homeland Security. The complaint was a masterpiece of legal fury. 53 pages detailing the assault, the injuries, the medical costs, the lost wages, the psychological trauma. Violation of Fourth Amendment rights, unlawful seizure and excessive force. Violation of Fifth Amendment rights, deprivation of liberty without due process. Assault and battery. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Loss of earning capacity from the permanent shoulder damage. The damages sought, $24.8 million. The criminal trial came first. Federal courtroom in Phoenix, packed daily with veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and media covering every moment. The prosecution's case was straightforward because they had what prosecutors dream of: perfect video evidence. They played the security footage. All 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The jury watched Terrence walk down the sidewalk, do nothing threatening, get surrounded, get punched, get beaten, get driven to the ground, get hit with a baton repeatedly while he was already down. They watched him go limp, stop moving, bleed on concrete while federal agents stood over him. Then they played the cell phone videos. Multiple angles showing the same violence from different perspectives. Showing how Terrence never swung at anyone, never reached for a weapon, never did anything except try to protect himself. The medical testimony was brutal. Doctors described the injuries in clinical detail, showed x-rays of broken ribs, MRI images of the torn rotator cuff, photos of Terrence's face so swollen his own mother hadn't recognized him. Terrence testified on day 4. He walked to the witness stand slowly, his shoulder still in a brace from the surgery, his face still showing faint scars from the fractures. Tell the jury what you were doing on September 21st before you encountered the defendants. I was walking home from work. I'm an HVAC technician. I just finished a 12-hour shift. I was tired. I just wanted to get home, eat dinner, maybe go to the gym. Did you do anything to provoke this encounter? No, sir. I was walking, minding my business. They stopped me, demanded papers. I told them I was a U.S. citizen, that I'd served in the Army. I showed them my military ID. They didn't care. Did you resist arrest? No, sir. I've never resisted in my life. I know how that goes for people who look like me. I kept my hands visible. I stayed calm. I asked for a lawyer. And they beat me unconscious anyway. Mr. Williams, you served in Afghanistan. You've been in combat. How did this experience compare? Terrence was quiet for a moment. In Afghanistan, I knew who the enemy was. I wore a uniform that identified me as a soldier. I carried a weapon. I was in a war zone. Here, I was on an American sidewalk wearing a t-shirt and carrying a backpack. And I got treated worse than enemy combatants I'd helped capture in Kandahar. Because at least we treated prisoners humanely. These agents didn't even give me that courtesy. The defense tried to argue that the agents had acted in good faith based on the information they had. But the prosecution destroyed that argument methodically. What information did you have before you approached Mr. Williams? Brennan shifted in his seat. We'd received a tip about possible undocumented individuals in that area. A tip. What did this tip say? That there were undocumented workers in the downtown area. Did the tip mention Mr. Williams specifically? No. Did it describe anyone? Not specifically. So you saw a young black man with a backpack and decided he fit the profile of an undocumented immigrant? We were conducting immigration enforcement operations. Answer the question. Did you profile Mr. Williams based on his race? No. Then why did you stop him? Silence. Agent Brennan. Mr. Williams showed you his military ID within the first minute of contact. Correct. Yes. And you still beat him unconscious. Why? He was resisting. The prosecutor played the video again. Point to the moment where Mr. Williams resists. Show the jury exactly when he becomes violent or threatening. Brennan couldn't, because it didn't exist. The video showed a man trying to pull away from being grabbed, then being beaten for it. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. All 3 agents, guilty. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The judge, a Reagan appointee, former prosecutor, generally law enforcement friendly, delivered sentences that shocked the courtroom. Special Agent Marcus Brennan, 5 years in federal prison. Agent Davis Cole, 5 years in federal prison. Third agent who'd participated, 3 years in federal prison for his lesser role. The judge's statement explained, the defendants violated their oaths, violated the law, and violated Mr. Williams's constitutional rights in the most egregious manner I've seen in 30 years on the bench. They beat a combat veteran unconscious because they couldn't be bothered to verify his identity. They used weapons against an unarmed man. They filed false reports. They showed no remorse. Federal law enforcement officers who commit crimes while wearing their badges deserve no leniency. These sentences reflect the gravity of their crimes. The civil trial was almost anticlimactic after the criminal convictions. The same evidence, the same videos, the same testimony. But this time, the question wasn't guilt, it was cost. The jury awarded $24.8 million. $8 million in compensatory damages for medical bills, lost wages, permanent shoulder damage that would affect Terrence's earning capacity for life, and pain and suffering. $16.8 million in punitive damages, a number specifically calculated to send a message that beating veterans for being black costs more than careers. Terrence used part of the settlement to establish a legal defense fund for veterans facing discrimination or excessive force. He partnered with the ACLU to create a Know Your Rights training program for young black men. And he went back to work because the Army had taught him to complete the mission even when you're hurt. 3 years later, Terrence still walks down that same sidewalk sometimes, past the same beige brick building where the security camera recorded his beating. But now there's a small memorial plaque installed by the city. On this site, September 21, 2023, Terrence Williams, U.S. Army veteran, was assaulted by federal agents in violation of his constitutional rights. May we remember that service and sacrifice demand respect, and authority without accountability is tyranny. The 3 agents are currently serving their sentences in federal prisons. Brennan and Cole won't be eligible for parole until they've served at least 85% of their 5 years. Their law enforcement careers are over, their pensions forfeited, their names forever associated with the beating of an Army veteran on video. If you believe that federal agents who commit crimes belong in prison, that veterans deserve respect instead of violence, and that constitutional rights protect everyone regardless of skin color, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because stories like Terrence's prove that cameras matter, accountability matters, and sometimes it takes putting agents in prison to teach other agents that badges don't grant immunity from the law.